Parenting never stops. Never. A child whines about something and you just get tired of stopping it, even though it's very easy to stop it. Sometimes you just get tired. You can just say to the child, English, meaning speak English, as is described in chapter 0 of the parenting training. Or a room is left a mess and you just don't want to bother with hearing the excuses or the attitudes, so you just don't. But every time we ignore something that doesn't contribute to loved, loving, and responsible, see, it's not complicated. It's not address this electronic issue or that thing, or when a child says that, or it's not about lists. Every time we ignore something that isn't, I can make it even simpler. We can make it 2 things: loving or responsible. It grows. It grows like weeds grow, without any attention or nourishment from us. I have never had to fertilize my weeds. And they grow great on my place. What's the solution? Parenting never stops. You have to be a parent every time. And I'm not being, I don't have an attitude here when I say this. You chose the job. And now it's yours to do. If you don't do it, who will? Over and over, every day I hear from parents who describe a problem they can't handle. And it turns out every single time, not very many things are 100%, but this is, that before this problem became unmanageable, the one the parent's talking about, there were 8 or 20 or 100 problems very much like it that preceded the one they're talking about. 100 small problems that were not addressed. And then they have the big one and go, what happened? And I'm raising my hand going, I know what happened. You ignored the 100 before it. To illustrate, nobody ever spontaneously walking down the street simply bursts into flame. Never. But if they open a gas can, spill some on the floor in their garage, leave the door closed so there's no circulation, continue working while really meaning to do something about the spill. Now the room, there's not just liquid on the floor. The room is filled with gasoline in gas form. Then they drop a hammer on concrete or drop 2 metal tools together, generating a single spark. At that point, there's usually not a fire. There's usually an explosion. And at that point, although at that point, there's not going to be a whole lot of conversation, they cannot claim that suddenly there was a fire. No, it's virtually like they planned the fire. It was inevitable. And this is the case with nearly every problem we have with children. We plan it by ignoring all the signs that came first. I talked to a man this morning who had an explosion with his daughter, and I asked him, I said, just tell me what happened in the 30 minutes before that. Just 30 minutes. There were at least 10 things she did that he didn't do anything about. So the explosion was not a surprise. Not an explosion, really. Just a natural building up to what she eventually did. It's the problem with our individual happiness too, and our problems in relationships. We have to stop them early. Early. Sooner, clearer. I tell people, sooner, clearer. I do a lot of outdoor work. Why? Well, big yard, but I like it. And I've seen that with a single pebble, I've done this many times, I can keep a large boulder from rolling down a hill. Just wedge it in there, and this great, big, 1,000-pound boulder that I don't want to roll away just sits there. With a twig as big almost as a thread, I can stop a commercial chainsaw that has the horsepower of an entire lawnmower. If it's not moving, I just wedge it in the right place. Completely safe, it won't move. But once the boulder has begun rolling, or the saw has begun spinning at thousands of RPMs, much harder to stop. And all kinds of disasters become possible, and stopping them can become impossible. Fixing them can have a horrifying cost. Play around with a moving chainsaw sometime and see what it takes to fix your problems that you create, especially if you swing it in your own direction. What's the solution? Act now, earlier and clearer. If you're having even an unkind thought that might come from anywhere, just for no apparent reason, usually somewhere in the past, but it doesn't matter. The initial thought is not the problem. It's nothing. What matters is what we do in the next single second. We can feed the initial thought or starve it, like the fire or unstoppable boulder or the running chainsaw that I've been talking about. One day I was working in the backyard and I had an unkind thought pop into my head about somebody who had treated me badly, and it doesn't matter what it was. It came out of nowhere. But I know where those thoughts go. They build like the weeds or the fires or the rolling boulders. So immediately I shouted out loud, no. I was changing the subject and then thought about something else. Well, my neighbor happened to be in the yard, out in his backyard, maybe 100 feet away, and he heard me shout. And he called over to me, are you okay? And I said, yeah, just having an argument. Well, he didn't see anybody with me, so he said, who with? I said, myself. He said, are you winning? I said, yes, I am, because I did, by stopping it early. You want to stop old habits? Stop them now. You want to stop negative thinking? Say no out loud if need be. And who cares who looks at you? Now. Don't feed the thoughts and they die. You want your children to feel loved, loving, and responsible? Do something every time you see a behavior or even facial expression or hear a tone inconsistent with those two things, loving and responsible. Stop early anything that isn't congruent with the happiness you really want. It's so much easier than fixing the problems later on, which sometimes can't be fixed. Say no now.